Back in part 1, we ran our 496 big block Chevy stroker. We ran an NA and with nitrous. Now it's time for some boost. In this video, we run our 496 multi-purpose motor with boost. Back in part 1, and if you haven't seen that video, check it out, it's right here. Back in part 1, we assembled the 496, ran it naturally aspirated, and it made 676 horsepower. Then we added nitrous to the tune of 859 horsepower. Now here, in part 2, it's time for boost. And not just one kind. We ran our 496 both with a 671 supercharger from the guys at the Blower Shop and Speedmaster, then followed that up with a Procharger F1A94 supercharger, intercooled and EFI. Lots of good stuff, so let's find out how well our combination did with a 671. Okay guys, we're following our big block buildup of the 496. This is our naturally aspirated one. Remember, we built a multi-purpose combination that allowed us to run a whole bunch of power adders. And back in part 1, you guys need to take a look at that video. We showed you the power output of the NA combination, and then we added nitrous. So the NA power output was 676.5 horsepower. And the peak torque was 589 foot-pounds of torque, so it did really well. Here's what happened before back in part 1 where we added the nitrous. Nice big gain there, over 850 horsepower, 859 horsepower. So that was a big gain, but we want to show the other power adders. So for this combination, we actually ran a 671 supercharger assembly with a Blower Shop blower, and the rest of the kit came from the guys at Speedmaster. So here's what happened when we installed the 671. Okay, big power gains as usual. This jumped the power up over 800 horsepower, but don't be dismayed because this was basically the smallest pulley combination or the slowest that we could spin the blower. I mean, equipped with this pulley combination, which was a 55 and a 50, I believe. Let me take a look at that just to verify that. We only had a peak of 3.4 psi. So basically, this is the least amount of boost that we could run from that 671. Yes, it was a 55 blower pulley and a 50 crank pulley. So a small crank pulley and the big blower pulley. So that's the slowest we could run it. Peak boost of 3.5 pounds, over 800 horsepower, 807 horsepower. So what we did then was switch the blower pulleys. We basically changed the ratio. So we put the smaller pulley that was on the crank up on the blower and vice versa. And there's what happened. All of a sudden, big jump. And so we basically almost doubled the boost. Well, we did double the boost up to 6.8 psi, a peak of 6.8. Where our supercharged combination produced 928 horsepower, which is pretty good. That's getting up near the limit of the 671. Now we've done 1,000 horsepower with that, and I think we probably could with that 671 if everything was right, especially on E85. We ran this on race gas because we were getting, we had 28 degrees of total timing on the supercharged combination with the 2 carburetors on it. This thing ran good, made good power. 928 horsepower. That's good power with a 671. Like I said, I think we could get to 1,000 if we could spin this blower even faster. But this is a good combination, made good power. Now let's take a look at what happened when we replaced the 671 with a Procharger. The 671 was awesome. Now it's time for Procharger boost. In preparation for our Procharger installation on our 496 big block Chevy, we had to make a couple of changes. We got rid of the Super Victor intake and Dominator carburetor that we ran naturally aspirated, and we replaced that with an EFI version of a single plane from Edelbrock. Now this is more of a Victor Jr. style with ports in the intake manifold designed to add port injection. And we installed a Wilson billet elbow, although any elbow will work, and also any kind of 4-hole 4150 throttle body. But it's important to note that that EFI intake had a 4150 throttle opening compared to the 4500 Dominator style that we ran when we ran this motor carbureted. So we ran this thing EFI and we're able to tune it using the Holley HP management system. But let's take a look and see. We actually lost a little bit of power from the smaller 4150 style Victor Jr. EFI intake manifold compared to the 4500 Super Victor. So here's the power difference, the red being the 4500 and the blue being the Victor Jr. EFI manifold. Now this really isn't an EFI versus carbureted comparison because it's actually more of a change in the intake manifold. That 4500 Super Victor obviously flows more air and is designed better for that 496 stroker. So this is more of a difference really in intake design, although there is some additional power to be had from the charge cooling offered by having a carburetor introduce the fuel into the common plenum rather than having it be directed at the port. So there's some gain there too. But I wanted to point this out because this is the change in our intake before we added the supercharger. So this will now be our baseline. So now let's take a look and see what happens when we install the Procharger F1A supercharger. Now that we've run the comparison on the intake design, we've gone over that. This is now a fuel-injected 496. We got the Holley HP management system on it. And it's the fuel-injected version with that Wilson elbow. This is our naturally aspirated motor, and it's making 665 horsepower and 583 foot-pounds of torque. So it's real similar to what it was before. It's down about 10 horsepower from when we had it carbureted with the 1050 Dominator, which in my opinion looks awesome. But here's what happened when we installed the Procharger F1A supercharger and their matching Procharger air-to-water intercooler. Now we ran dyno water through the core, which is about 82 or 83 degrees at the time of the test. And the Procharger was equipped with a 4.5-inch blower pulley, making a peak boost of 11.2 pounds at the power peak. So this is what happened when we installed the Procharger. As you can see, things were working very well. Power is still climbing rapidly, and we could keep revving this thing and go over 1200 or wherever we want. We know that the supercharger will support that, but equipped in this manner and run to 6500 RPM, which is our self-limiting RPM level and boost and power, and this thing made 1144 horsepower at 11.2 pounds. And as you can see, we were only at the torque peak actually at 6500, so there's a lot left in this combination. 925 foot-pounds of torque at 6500 RPM. So you can see that kind of power gain, that's pretty dramatic. And I like the F1A94 supercharger. It works really well, especially in these power ranges. I mean, for like 1000 horsepower stuff, obviously even 11 or even 1200, which we've done with that supercharger before, it works really well. Now, we could have just as easily run this as a blow-through carburetor deal. We've run the CSU blow-through carburetor a lot, and that works really well. We could have stuck that on our intake manifold, on an intake manifold designed for a 4150, because the 850 carburetor from CSU that we have is obviously a 4150. And we could blow through that, and we would add extra charge cooling. I actually like to run an intercooler on all of these, even at this kind of boost level. I know it works without one, and there's charge cooling offered by the carburetor, but I always like to run an intercooler if I'm running boost, like let's say over 10 pounds. Intercooler is always a good idea, even on a blow-through application. But on this one, on our fuel-injected version, we had the air-to-water intercooler. It worked great, you know, almost 1150 horsepower from this big block. And it goes to show you that we can run on our multi-purpose motor. We ran it NA, we ran it with Nitrous, we ran it with a 671, and we ran it with this Procharger, and everything worked out great. The motor was still alive, still happy, and still wanting to do more. Okay guys, what did you think? What did you think of this buildup on the 496? Then running Nitrous, a 671, and a Procharger. I guess the only thing missing are turbos, right? But the 496 was made so that we can run all these power adders. And I like this kind of combination. Now I love a good dedicated combination where it's high RPM, lots of compression, wild cam timing, a dedicated NA motor. That's all great. And I like dedicated blower motors and dedicated nitrous motors and dedicated turbo motors. But I also like this kind of combination that I can pick and choose. And that's exactly what we did. We wanted to show you not which one was better, but what your options are. If a guy wants an NA motor, he can run that 496 NA. It makes good power. If he wants nitrous, just add a shot. Heck, you can run a lot more than the 150 shot we added. If you want to run a 671 and go old school and have it look cool, stick out of the hood, that's awesome. But if you really want to make power with the 671, I would suggest stepping up to an 871. If you want to run a lot more boost from that big positive displacement blower, you're probably going to need something more than a 671 if you want to make 11 or 1200 horsepower. Jump up to the 871. Now on the ProCharger, same deal. Is the ProCharger better than the 671? No, they're completely different. And we weren't trying to prove one was better than the other. We were just trying to show you, hey, if you want that one, pick that one and here's what happens. If you like that one, pick that one, here's what happens. All good stuff, all good combinations. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for supporting the channel. I'm Richard Holder. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Help me out, and I'll keep the videos coming.